Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, hello, hello. Listen to my dulcet tones. I just like hearing myself in the morning.
I realize that.
Yeah, I'm glad you find it funny.
I find it humorous in all the right ways. Don't worry about it.
This is good.
Not at your expense, but in conjunction with your efforts to make the world a better place. We must find humor.
Not
in
at my
everything.
expense. Let's expound a little bit on that.
I am not laughing at your expense. I'm laughing because you're a humorous, excellent conversationalist, and general fun-loving guy to be around.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. So
I think I have to point that out.
What do you want?
Because it's always nothing. It's just it's often misconstrued that I'm a highly critical, sometimes dangerous personality to be in a studio with, and I don't want people to misinterpret that. We have a lot of respect for you.
Thank you. Well, look, breaking news. Obviously, 2 days ago, a Texas officer resigns after pulling a gun on a teen's pool party. You saw that. Actually, you were the one that showed it to me.
I did see that. I did get the word that he resigned. Yes, you saw it yourself. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, when you get into that sort of, it's interesting. I think, the police get a lot of flack.
They do.
And rightly so in many, many situations. But sometimes I think they go, they're human too. And I think I guess they have to be trained to sort of not be, let their emotions run wild. But I think this is where this guy was finding something out of control. And this is like having kids, really, in a sense. Yeah. You really have, these were kids. These were 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids. Yes. And when you have kids at 5 and 6 and 7 and they're running around and screaming, sometimes it's very hard to keep your control and your cool.
We've all had those moments.
You've all had those. We've all done that. So looking at this, it kind of felt like that when I was looking at these images of this police officer running around saying, "Sit down, get on the ground." Da, da, da. Yeah. It almost felt like he was out of control as a parent in a really weird way.
Well, you could get that feeling from it. I mean, the first thing I like to tell people in discussions like this, my brother-in-law is a police officer, my grandfather was a police officer for 41 years. And when you criticize the behavior of a police officer, you're not generally criticizing the behavior of police everywhere.
Right.
In this particular instance, these kids were very young. Confusion was, rampant.
Yeah.
And he was kind of creating the confusion because he was telling certain pool party participants to sit down and he was telling others to go home. And he was running around doing it kind of almost like generating more chaos the way he was moving.
That's what I felt. That's what I felt. Yeah. I think he was out of control.
He was kind of spinning it. And you could see, I mean, the thing that's unacceptable, I think a lot of us get moments where, okay, you lost your cool, that's human, which is what you're saying. But these are very young kids, and when you pull a firearm,
that's absolutely unacceptable.
That's where totally you cost yourself.
But this is what I was saying. I mean, when you see him do what he did, I mean, and some of the police officers were just standing there, just talking to some of the kids, and he's running around like a blue ass fly, getting his, actually blue. Funny, but anyway, he was out of control, and
totally,
and putting his knee on a 14-year-old girl's back is just
totally.
What's she got? Like a gun or something? For goodness' sake, in her bikini.
You clearly see that she's unarmed.
And obviously she's wearing a bikini, for goodness' sake.
And I don't know what the crime rate is like in that part of Texas, but to have 10 officers respond to a pool party tells me you're either living in Mayberry, or you are profiling in a way that could lead to some hostility. These kids, it doesn't really, to be honest with you as a parent, and I think I speak for you too, you're a parent, it really doesn't matter what happened. There's different sides. Certain Caucasian witnesses are saying certain things, that these kids use profanity. No profanity, I think, warrants a gun being pulled on you by an officer of the law and bebeing thrown down in that fashion. Because if you see the video, she was clearly pinned with aggression. It wasn't sit down here. I mean, hit her. Ugly moment. So I think, I can't speak for you. I don't know what your feelings are.
The interesting thing,
looking at that, I'm like, what could the kid could have done?
Well,
to get a gun
not a lot, but I think, again, you're dealing with, you're talking about areas. I don't know the area that they're in. I don't know how good or how bad it was, but there were a lot of African American kids at this particular party, and few white kids. And as somebody mentioned, who was I think the kid that was videoed this, he says he skips over, white people and tells the African American kids to sit down and get on the ground.
You can clearly see that
which
in
is
the video.
Basically showing there is a certain racially motivated instance in this.
It's actually disgustingly obvious. I'm kind of laughing at how obvious it is, if you know what I'm talking about, if you've seen the video, and you now have, and it's almost like a case study for how not to behave. I can't. 10 officers to break up a pool party in the first place. It's since come out that most of those kids have pool passes or live within the neighborhood or close enough to the neighborhood or were in fact invited. So I don't know who you can call to get. I don't know what you can report to get 10 officers to show up at your door.
Well, yeah. Let's go like this. We have kids, and I don't have my teenagers yet. But if we had a bunch of parents at a pool party and one of them was out of line, you're going to throw them on the floor and put their knee in their back. Come on. That's just, it's like me, throwing my 2-year-old across the room and smacking him against the wall.
Well,
the first time type of thing.
The first time I saw it, my heart hurt actually watching it as a parent, to see that was someone's daughter being thrown to the ground like that and being roughed up like that. And it's obviously, I have a huge amount of respect for the police, and most of my experiences with the police have been positive. So this isn't a commentary on the police force across the United States in general. We're talking about this one particular incident, and the idea that he pulls a gun and you can almost see 2 other officers like grab him, kind of like, whoa, like they almost look like they were reacting like this is now going to a very bad place. I don't understand. He does pull his gun and kind of goes after him. It's clear, Well,
the interesting thing is there is a black resident that actually said that it wasn't really racially motivated. He said that it was a community pool, and the teenagers showed up. And although the homeowners association, which I know, prohibit bringing more than 2 guests to a pool, so they created a pool party, and the security guard was outnumbered, so he called the police, and that's how it started. He said, it wasn't the neighbors in there, and it wasn't basically, he says, it was not a racially motivated event at all. The whole thing's being completely blown out of proportion. I just think, yes, it wasn't, but there were certain things where he's going after, black teens rather than the white ones.
That's evident in the video, and you have to ask yourself, would that kid have been thrown to the ground had she been white? Like that.
That's true. Yeah.
The other question I have is, this security guard. I don't know many pools with security guards.
Oh, no, there are.
But let's say this guy.
There are.
He obviously made some kind of panicked report similar to Mexicans storming the walls of the Alamo. It must have been how he made it sound, because who calls and says, I'm outnumbered here, I need the police at this pool?
No, funny you should mention that, because where I'm living right now is actually a community area, because we're about to buy our house, we're living in our townhouse, and that has a community pool that you can only bring a certain amount of residents to the pool.
But is the solution to call the cops on that?
Yes, it is, because you can't. How are you going to remove them?
But then let's say you do call the cops, which is something I wouldn't do even if I was the security guard, but let's just say they're sticking their middle finger up in your face and saying, we're not going. And they're getting very, very disrespectful. And you call the cops. Are 10 cops the answer? And let's say 10 cops have the time to respond to this. 5 units. We're talking 5 units.
True.
And let's say they do respond. Is that how we solve it based on our response?
Not necessarily, but again, you don't know. I don't, personally, and I don't know if you know as well, what the calls protocol is when you're calling out. It should say units in the area of X go to this area. There's a pool party. So maybe 5 happen to be in the area. I don't know what that situation was.
Well, as a mayor, I would be ashamed of that sort of level of police involvement on that particular call. But I understand that could be a factor. The fact of the matter is a lot of those kids were sitting down as told. Other kids were told to go away, and they were going away. For some reason, this young lady was grabbed, and it actually looked, I don't think she did hit her head on the sidewalk, but it looks when he initially threw her down like she had made contact with the sidewalk. But
no, I don't think she did. I don't think she
It's just, obviously he resigned, which I think is a step in the right direction, because pulling your gun on kids
you just
that
don't do
age,
that.
I mean, that's just a horrible, and we are talking about protection this month.
That's right.
And we can turn to a lot of heroic police officers who do that day to day in a thankless fashion.
Yeah, and I think it's very unfortunate in a sense, because you have thousands and thousands of police officers across the country that do an amazing job, and some that don't, and some that are corrupt, and some that are not as good and do it for the wrong reasons. But also, there's the other factor, and a lot of people don't realize this. They get slammed because they are in the front line.
Of course.
They are dealing with criminals, drug dealers, so many different degenerates every day that it must affect them physically and mentally. And how do they deal with it? How do they respond to certain situations? Therefore, how do you when they're responding to a different situation, they might have just come from a murder case. They might have. You just don't know. I agree. It's a tough position for them to be in.
Yeah, absolutely, and they deserve our respect. Like I said, my grandfather, my brother-in-law, and several of my grandfather's friends I grew up with were all policemen, and they were in my probably, in my view, they were fantastic, and my experience with police have been good. What's coming out of this, which is highly disturbing, is not just the way this particular situation was handled, but the idea that Texas may legislate the use of cell phone cameras in situations like this, which I think is a step towards some severe neo-fascist agenda. That's quite scary.
Sorry, sorry, say that again. It might do what?
Now there's, the House of Representatives in Texas, it is rumored, are trying to put forth a bill that would make filming this a felony. Filming this kind of thing.
See,
and that is very George
wrong.
Orwellian.
That to me is not. I mean, because how else are you going to prove?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so then you're then saying, well, nothing there is admissible in evidence.
Right.
Which it's kind of then isn't that part of the process here that everybody can digital cameras is just another part of the age that we live in.
Yeah, and I think honestly it's an age, I think with button cams and things like that now being standard issue for some police departments, that it's all part of it. I think I really don't know what to make of it, but that is a very dangerous concept, and I think we'd be kidding ourselves. In both ways, it's ignorant to assume that all cops are bad, because they're not, but you'd be lying to yourself if you felt that some of them didn't have some psychological barriers to overcome on the job, and some of them are triggered by race.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is that one police officer does something, and it's all the police that are tarnished.
I mean, I've been pulled over repeatedly. I was pulled over recently, and the guy walked up to my door and said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Speeding." And I said, "Fair enough, I'll take the ticket." And he goes, "Well, hold on." I'll decide whether I ticket you or not. Just like the reverse psychology. My wife has been pulled over, and she's been asked, where are you coming from? And she said Warner Brothers, and he said, "No, where are you really coming from?" Like she has not been believed when she stated her place of employment since 1992, and I'd have to believe that some of that,
motivated?
That it's
yes.
And you see a lot of that when you're close to the African American community in a way that I don't think everyone really fully understands.
Well, a lot of my friends are African American, and so I do get it.
Yeah.
But also to the reverse effect, I've been in a situation where I was at an African American, mainly African American event in a sense, and sat down at a table. My wife and I felt unwelcome at that table,
and that happens
so
too.
There is a reverse effect of it as well. So, and I think we all have to understand we've got to live together somehow.
We do, and this is a great talking point for exactly that. Not only because we're in the month of protecting children, as the Peace Fund likes to do, but we do work. Teachers Without Borders, and with a lot of different cultures and different people, and quite frankly different classes, where we see all walks of life, and we understand that there's good and bad in everything. But our solution to this kind of thing is the only thing we can do if we're going to save the human race, quite frankly, is a humanitarian initiative, not a political initiative. Correct. It almost doesn't matter who we vote for. You have to make the humanitarian decisions day to day as an existence on this planet, and hope that creates a positive momentum to build some. I know it's gut-wrenching for you to see that, because I know how you are. I know how you are off air with things like this. And I mean, the whole Peace Fund is basically an initiative based on your conviction. So I know that you get it, and I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. But it is kind of heartbreaking to see how some people are treated away from the camera sometimes, in ways that most of us would not tolerate or even expect, and we're all just kind of expected to move on. And I think you've got to embrace the wondrous possibilities that are all these different cultures and different people, and appreciate what all these different people can bring.
Well, the interesting thing is, I think, I come from a culture that was originally very mixed.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we had guys from the Caribbean, guys from, France, guys from different places. So there was much more of a mix, more than there is today, funnily enough, in a sense. Because I think in England right now there's a lot of segregation happening because of a lot of influx of different cultures coming from different places who want to stick together. The Polish, the Tunisians, the Armenians. There
is a lot of that. There's a lot of that here, and I think part of that is because they feel safe within their own cultural groups.
Correct.
In part because when they step outside that, sometimes they deal with issues like this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk about a little bit of positive here. Every June 12th, we're coming up to June 12th, it's World Day Against Child Labour. Yes, absolutely. It's observed to raise awareness to the plight of child labourers worldwide, and it actually affects hundreds of millions of girls and boys around the world. And this year will focus particularly on the importance of quality education as a key step in tackling child labour, which we've talked about before, because with knowledge there is power. There is actually the ability to make a decision as to what you do is correct. It's interesting. I was also watching yesterday regarding this. There was a discussion about northern Iraq, how the Muslim-led coalition had taken over. When they went in there, they literally took out hundreds, if not thousands, of young girls and boys and put them into child labour, put them into child slavery, and were basically just sharing them off. So they killed all the young men and the old men, and then went in and took all the women, and then just now. So the mentality, and when I was listening to these guys talk about, we're doing this today, I was like sickened.
Who does this?
Oh, this done in a lot of parts of the world, and we don't actually understand that.
But who gets up in the morning and that is their daily objective?
Well, you look at the way these people live, it's really scary. So, I'm
going to round up some child slaves before breakfast.
That's exactly it. And
sit down in time for tea. I mean, this is just remarkable.
When you have nothing, the issue is when you have nothing, you don't care about anything. You only care about the immediate gratification of yourself or your friends or your close-knit group. That's all you care about. You've got no water, no electricity, no food, so you're going to go and get it.
And this goes back to a situation we've talked about repeatedly on this show, that poverty does breed crime, it breeds hate, it breeds criminal actions, and the class warfare that we're fighting day to day is a bigger problem than I think people want to realize on the surface.
Well, I want to highlight a couple of other things that are in the news also right now. There's a cancer charities scam going on.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, exactly. Which is
I thought this was supposed to be good news.
Well, no. The interesting thing is that we highlighted a few months back, and I'm going to do it again. Certain charities that are out there that take millions of dollars in donations and do absolutely zero with it, except line the pockets of their lawyers and their own personal, houses and yachts and whatever else they buy. This particular thing, it's an unprecedented collaboration. The Federal Trade Commission and 58 law enforcement agencies put a web of shame and cancer charities out of business. The investigation revealed that 4 charities involved: the Cancer Fund of America, Cancer Support Services, Children's Cancer Fund of America, and the Breast Cancer Society primarily benefited one family, that of the Cancer Fund founder James T. Reynolds Sr., rather than the cancer patients the organizations purported to help. In total, these groups made off with $187 million in donations.
Wow.
This is a reminder to you out there. Do your homework before donating to a charity.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to do that. Take the time to research the charity's finances, their governance practices, and the results that they have. Look at what they've got on their site. That's what we do on the Peace Fund. We have the results on our site. That's what we need in our society. We need to see where the money's going. You need to have due diligence on it. Don't just give your money away. You earned that money. You worked hard and slaved for that money. Don't just give it to somebody you think somebody said, "Oh, they're good. Why don't you just give it to them?" Not a good idea. Do the research first. When you go out and buy a car, you don't just sit in any car, do you? You go out and see which car you might want to buy based on the results, based on what you see, the research that you've done.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing. Why would you just go and throw away your money that way?
Well, it's an amazing tool, and it's quite a nice practice to have access to, where you can find out who and what is actually what out there, because you never really know.
Right. I want to actually put one other thing also, which is also in the news right now. This is a real race against time. It does come under protection, but it's also really under aiding in a sense. Producer Gary Gordon and his family received a real nightmarish medical diagnosis this March, with both their 4-year-old daughter and 20-month-old daughter have an incredibly rare and potentially fatal degenerative brain disorder, which is Batten disease. Most children with late infantile NCL Batten disease, they die between the ages of 6 and 12, so few suffer from the diseases. Maybe 10 at a time in the world. So there's been limited research towards a cure, even though the disease was first discovered in 1903. They have set up the Charlotte and Gwyneth Gary Foundation to try and raise $10 to $12 million necessary for the urgent research to help find a cure. curebatten.org. Facebook is whitelisting pages of celebrities with huge followings to carry the fundraising appeal. Each plea is asking followers to donate $1. You can also help spread the word at curebatten and at #curebatten. We'll be posting that link to our social media site to just give you guys a little insight.
Who's going to do the research? Do we know yet? Which institute?
That I don't know. You'll find that out on the site.
And how do you know you only need $10 to $12 million worth of research?
Well, that's an
translate?
interesting comment. I mean, it's a lot of money. 10
that
to
is
12
a lot
million.
of money.
I was looking at the thing yesterday, and they was actually saying that with the supporters that they have, there's some very big, heavy celebrity supporters who have 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, type of followers.
Yeah.
And with the amount of people there, they've got something like 200 million, and they figure if only like 10% of these people donate, they'll raise at least $4 to $5, $6 million just by $1 donations, which is an amazing thing.
It is. And it's a tragic situation, hopefully to be covered by a noble effort, but it is interesting that you earmark. We need 10 to 12. I mean, I wouldn't know how to compute that.
I know. But I'm sure there'll be other organisations that will come in to actually help this.
What is the brain disease? Do we know what it's called?
It's called Batten disease.
Batten disease.
Batten.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, I know. But it's a very rare. It's fatal. It's a degenerative brain disorder.
Huh.
So
terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
I mean, you think about it. You've got your 6-year-old and you're still at 20-month.
But there is a cure.
A 4-year-old. There is no cure. That's the point. It's a potentially fatal degenerative brain disorder, and they're trying to receive. It's a medical diagnosis. I believe that they need. What they're looking for is the research for the cure. So they need to find this cure before these two. Well, one of them especially, because I read yesterday the 20-month-old is still not having. She's got slight signs of it, although she's been diagnosed with it. It's because she's too young. Once she's getting to 3 or 4 or 5 years old, then that's going to be much more fatal.
This is obviously terrible. But the first thing that goes to mind is I would have no idea, faced with a situation this tragic, who to turn to. I was kind of curious what the steps are. Like, do you call UCLA Medical Center and start the?
I don't know. I think all of that will be on their site.
I would love to really investigate who's going to do. I mean, because it seems like this would be a conglomerate of medical groups working towards a cure, right?
I would imagine, yes. I would imagine that would be, I would imagine that would be it. Let's just talk about, I wanted to highlight that, but since we're in child protection, and we've already been 25 minutes into the show, I cannot believe we've already been talking that long. Maybe we bring John Beerley in. Is John there?
Maybe we do.
Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, guys. How are you this morning?
Fabulous. We've been talking about a lot of things this morning, and the time is going. But child protection, we're going to take this month-long look at tackling the issue of, right now, child labour. We've got many kids over the world do some kind of work. You might have an after-school job, or maybe help out with the chores around the house. That can be great. It builds skills and earns you a little bit of extra cash, but it's not child labour. The only work that's harmful to a child's physical and mental development is considered to be child labour. 1 in 7 kids is exposed to this kind of labour. 1 in 7. They're kept from school and basically the chance to improve the situation they were born into. We've talked about education being important. they often put into danger too. Every year, 22,000 children die from accidents related to their work. And that doesn't say anything about the mental and emotional harm of being forced to work long, hard hours or experiencing things that no person should. Oh God! I don't know about you, John, but or Ethan. I sit here and I think of kids in sweatshops and taking needles out of.
It's like a modern day Oliver Twist.
It's terrible. It's terrible, and especially too. I mean, this happens so often too in places where there's not enough work, and you think, let's put these adults who would give anything to have a job to work, and let these kids be kids and have educations. But those, the circumstances in a lot of these countries just don't support that now.
I'm surprised you don't see this more in movies.
It's true, actually.
This should be for the next Rambo movie.
Stopping child labor.
Yeah, you should storm into the mean streets of Bangkok, and if there is in fact child labor situations there, and liberate them.
It's interesting because looking at this, the International Labour Organization estimates that more than 2/3 of the child labor is in the actual agricultural sector. So farms, because children in rural areas, they're actually brought in between 5 to 7 years old. Mm-hmm. to do that type of thing. I want to put it in perspective for a second, guys, as well, because the US is now 320 million people, approximately
around there. Yeah,
that. There are 218 million children ages 5 to 17 involved in child labor worldwide. That's 2/3 the size of all the population in the United States. That's unbelievable. 2/3, 126 million children work in hazardous conditions, often enduring beatings, humiliation, and sexual violence by their employers. Anyway, I'm not going to go. Highest numbers of child laborers are in Asia-Pacific region, where there are about 122 million working children. That's in the Asia-Pacific region. And I've seen this before myself. Going to places like Thailand or the Philippines. There are a lot of China. There are a lot of different places that actually have a very high proportion of children living it because their parents are poor. So rather than them send them out to beg, they put them into child labour situations, although some of them are actually sent out because they're kidnapped and put into those situations. John, have you ever come across any of that in your travels from wherever?
I have not. The only thing, pretty much, my only experience with this is just, researching what a lot of our heroes of the week research, and, finding out what some of these, again, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids who we've had on the show find out about these issues and make sometimes bigger strides against them than actual governments. It's sad. I mean, thank God for these kids who are out there doing it, but I just feel like we're putting, why we shouldn't be putting this on the shoulders of children to solve.
No, of course not. I'm sure this is bad everywhere, but this is probably very bad in the United States. I doubt we'd want to admit that, but we should look into that. I bet it's terrible here in Los Angeles.
Well, the interesting thing is, I don't think because when you're dealing with slavery, I don't think it works quite the same here. I'm sure there are children in the United States that are being put into servitude in some form or another. The majority of kids that are put into servitude are in other countries. 71% of whom are girls, and they're in things such as simple as cooking and cleaning and looking after some kids, or gardening, or bringing the water, or anything that happens in a home. That's where they get, let's say, employed in a sense, but I don't know whether they are employed. Some people call it a necessary evil, even because there's prostitution and slavery. They're the ones that usually address, but it doesn't help the children who carry out work that's labelled as less harmful. About 70% of the kids work on land or in households. These kids too are seriously damaged. They have to be. I mean, there's no way. You're not doing, you're not playing with your kids. You're actually working and being told what to do. Mentally abused probably as well in many cases, and that can then affect their schoolwork. Because it affects their health and their future prospects in many things. United States, you talked about the United States. Here's some figures for you. There are estimated 50,000 slaves in the United States, and an additional 17,500 being trafficked into the country every year.
I don't doubt that.
Every year. This is this country. We're not talking about anywhere else. We're talking about the United States. that means that more people will be enslaved annually than during the legal slavery in America's darkest history. Think about that. Persecution is difficult because, you've got so many cultures where children, live. They don't have the clear-cut distinctions between work and family duties, but these kids, they're not treated as part of the family, and they work, it's carried out, it's not equivalent to ordinary chores. It's different.
We have a mutual friend who did a film. It was a docudrama about child slavery, the sex trade, child sex trade. Mm-hmm. And in the process of working on that film, he told me that he discovered that Atlanta is the biggest.
That's what
one of the biggest.
Who was that?
Doug Jones.
Yes, that's right. I did speak to him.
He said the trigger points are an airport and major sports teams where people go in for the weekend. So there's a real kind of freakish, scary under. That's something on John Beerley's line.
John Beerley, what have you got?
He's
in
getting
there?
Buzzed by the
Air Force.
I'm close to a highway at the moment. I'm not outside, but I'm close.
And another undisclosed.
I don't want to know.
I'm in an old phone booth outside of Hattonfield, Illinois.
I do what I have to do to bring the stories to Peace Fund Radio every week. Sometimes it's a little dangerous.
But I think one of the scary things about that situation Doug Jones summed up for us is it shows that there's a part of culture that literally leads a dual life, one of them very disturbing, that would partake in a...
you watch about kids being kidnapped as well. I mean, there was the case of the Austrian... I know. I mean, especially girls, because girls could be used in many different ways, as we know. There was a guy... Remember the guy in Austria? I don't know if you remember, about a year and a half ago?
He was the hostage situation.
He was found in his house where he had I think it was like 4 or 5 girls living in a basement. That's basically where he was. And he kept them, and he'd actually, slept with one of them, had a child with another one.
Kind of built this rather demented form of family connections.
Yeah, and that's happened also in the United States too. I mean, even in California.
The scary thing is that could be happening a block from your house.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And you probably don't know.
And that's part of the thing. When people a lot of the time turn a blind eye to certain things like this because you see something happening, you're like, oh, what's happening? You don't think it could be something untoward. But if you see a child that's not happy or a child that's been beaten or a child you might have to think twice and maybe get somebody else to take a look at that family that's actually doing that. And I talked about California, there's a case of a young girl in California called Shaima. She was enslaved by a wealthy Egyptian couple, and she knew nothing about life or anything else except the cruel conditions of sleeping in a garage and caring for a family of 5. She couldn't read when she was rescued. Nothing. All she knew was servitude. That's it. So you just robbed that child of her future.
You've destroyed a human being, essentially.
And there's
well, it's the tragedy of it because again, so many of these kids, that's all they know. We've had stories on the show before about young girls in Africa who have to walk 3 miles to get dirty water to take back to their families and are often sexually assaulted on the way. In other words, it's not just walk miles a day to get water. You have to walk miles a day to bring water to your family, and you get sexually assaulted several times a week. And that's your daily life. That's your daily routine. It's staggering.
This is why my daughter, who's now 12 and a half, cannot even go to the restroom by herself without me walking her.
No, seriously, I would never.
If we're in a mall, if we're anywhere, a restaurant, I usually make the walk and stand, post myself sentry outside.
Do you know, there's we talk about the United States, we talked about other countries. One of the most hazardous things in the United States that actually has child labor, and it's perfectly legal, is the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
The tobacco industry... Children as young as 7 are working on tobacco farms in North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia alongside their parents, which is a legal practice if they're working alongside their parents. But those parents are actually exposing their child or children to nicotine, toxic pesticides, and other things as well. So they suffer from nausea, dizziness, vomiting, and all the symptoms of nicotine poisoning. And when you have all these profits made by these big tobacco companies... It's kind of sick because the U.S. law prohibits the sale of tobacco products to children, but children can legally work on tobacco farms in the U.S. What is that about?
Well, that's a tragic sort of definition of the way things now work in this country. Big money, special interests can basically do whatever they want, and they will do it at the expense of the human race wherever it suits them.
Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, we talked about slavery before, which was in a lot of the southern states, which I've just mentioned.
Well, this is the craziest nation on earth, in case you were wondering.
It really is. I mean,
close to the top.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But there's so much diversity here, but there's so much positive stuff here as well. But you have to highlight the other stuff as well. The federal government should move to prohibit anyone under the age of 18 from working in the tobacco industry. As simple as that. Even though the big tobacco companies, they've basically recently said that they would start requiring farmers to buy tobacco from not use workers younger than 16.
Well, that's nice requirement, but you're assuming people are going to live up to that standard.
There has to be And
this is an organization or a group that can certainly pay a living wage to an adult. I mean, the profit margin in the tobacco industry is massive.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about something positive. John Bailey, I know we have something actually, this morning I want you to bring us a couple of updates in the meantime, because let's get the positive portion of the show.
Yeah, well, since 1997, when Adrian founded the Peace Fund to protect, educate, and aid children everywhere, that everywhere has included everywhere from inner city schools, where Adrian took the first School Makes a Difference programs, to Wellspring Hope, to the infant respirator in Hungary. We've been all over the place. We have a new initiative called Peace Fund Helping Hand that is trying to bring sort of a grassroots individual approach to help some of the children that we hear from every month who are facing insurmountable obstacles in their lives. Our board researches each case for legitimacy, allocates the appropriate aid, and then we'll bring you updates on the child's progress and success. It's called Peace Fund Helping Hand, and it's in the top of our website at thepeacefund.org. Donating is very simple. Just text Peace Fund to 88588, and right now that's in the USA only. And our first young man that we're helping is a young man named Jordan. Jordan is 9 years old right now. From the time he was a young boy, over the course of being 7 and 8 years old, he endured 2 divorces, this family moving across the country, his mother nearly dying from breast cancer. She finally got better. They go to visit his grandmother. They find out that she is ill. He helps his grandmother and his mother helps his mother take care of his grandmother through her illness. The grandmother passes away. And throughout all of this, they're unable to transfer school records back and forth between California and Florida. And as a result, he's gotten very far behind in his school, and he's in danger of failing 3rd grade. Now, his teacher says that with a tutor, he can get back on top of things and he can get back on track. And this is an extremely bright and kind and respectful young boy who has just endured a lot at a very, very young age. So just reach out, text Peace Fund to 88588, and you can check out his supporter wall right there on our website. And just think of it in these terms, guys. $10 we spend on lunch, and you eat that lunch and it's gone forever along with your $10. Just think what all of us everybody out there listening could do just if we just reach out and help a young man like this. So thepeacefund.org, check out the Helping Hand banner at the top of the page, and you can read a letter from Jordan's mother that tells the story in greater depth and kind of lets everybody know exactly what this young man is up against and how we can help him.
Let me expound a little bit on that, John, because I know personally there's stuff about this, because it was funny because when I first this came across the board's issues, there were 1 or 2 people said this story is too far-fetched. Who's checked out on this? And I said, this has been looked at by the board and by us personally to check it out. There's something in the letter from the mother that's not even in there, and it's the fact that when he went back after his mother going through breast cancer and having a double mastectomy and having to go through chemo for 18 months, this child was trying to keep together because her family was falling apart through very semi-violent situation with her husband, who she then divorced. Once that went through, for the next 5 months, they were trying to stay together and put him through school. They then went back to Miami, took a lot of their stuff, all his toys and all that stuff that he had. When he went to see his grandmother in Florida, and his mother was in there. Somebody came and robbed the house, took all the stuff that was in the house while they were in there, including his toys and everything else, though his PlayStation or whatever else he had at the time. And then they stole the car out of the garage while they were in the house. So not only that, and then the grandmother died. So this child has gone through so many different things, and people, I want to help a kid that is a good kid, and if he doesn't get help in this way, he could go down a different path. So he's a 9-year-old. He's
Very
a really
true.
bright. It's so you got to. Okay, I know there are hundreds of kids out there, but we want to focus on this one kid for the next month, and we're going to try and do this. And through our partners and that, we're going to be bringing you different children that you might want to look at, and maybe they'll touch your heart and give you the ability to drop $10 a month, or even go through a supporter wall where you might be able to support a little bit more than that.
Again, a very important initiative on your part that is sometimes overlooked is the fact that if somebody does not get help, they tend to go to the dark side of life.
Correct, and we talked about education being a very, very important thing that has a here we go, domino effect on so many different things in life.
Totally.
We talk about how many youths are in the penal system right now because they can't read, because they can't write, because they then went to drugs and gangs and everything else. That gave them a different path. And that's something very, very important for us to actually have a look at. John, I'm going to put it to you again for a Hero of the Week.
Yes, our Hero of the Week this week is Eleanor Su. She is 16 years old from Palo Alto, California. Eleanor was participating in a program from Free the Children, which is another one of the organizations that we have highlighted on the show before. Free the Children was actually founded by a 12-year-old named Craig Kielberger. So here you have a young girl, she was 10 years old at the time, volunteering for a program that was started by children. I just love the circle of that. You have all these kids helping kids. It's incredible. So she's volunteering in this program at age 10. She sees a picture of a young boy who's missing his arm. And as she researches the picture to find out what happened to the boy, she finds out that he was tortured by the soldiers who came in and destroyed his community, destroyed the schools, kidnapped so many of the other children, and they chopped his arm off with a machete. What is the purpose of torturing a 12-year-old? It's not like you're going to get information out of a 12-year-old. They just did it out of pure cruelty. And Eleanor was just so devastated by this that she knew that she had to do something herself to make a difference. So she founded an organization called Schools for Africa. You can find them at schoolsforafricafund.org. Schools for Africa Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that strives to bring sustainable education to children and communities in impoverished regions of Africa, with their mission to aid these children in escaping the shackles of poverty by providing with a brighter future through education. In the 6 years that she's been operating, she's raised more than $42,000. She has built 4 schools that have educated 700 kids to keep them on a good path, to give them the tools and the education and the power that they need to build their own lives and to, escape the system that has swallowed up so many of their peers. They raise money through local fundraisers, benefit concerts, bake sales, concession stands, marathons, grants, corporate sponsors, you name it, they do it. I urge everybody to go to schoolsforafricafund.org to read about what Eleanor is up to and how she does it. And you can also watch videos of the last 2 concerts that she held as fundraisers in 2013 and 2014. She's established branches of this in both her middle school and high schools. She's encouraging more children, more young people like herself to get out there and make a difference. And she was able to travel actually to Kenya in 2012 to work with the Oluwesha Secondary School through Free the Children to actually see in person the kids that she was helping and get more ideas for what specific aid was needed for these kids. Most recently, she was a member of the 3.Dash Summit for Global Teen Leaders in New York, and she was nominated for that by someone named Neha Gupta, whom our listeners will recognize as another Hero of the Week, whose own organization, EmpowerOrphans.org, has raised $1.7 million since Neha was 9 years old. She's 19 now. So again, an incredible group of kids who are working very hard. Eleanor Su, you are our latest Peace Fund Radio Hero of the Week.
Yeah, good job.
Well
I mean, Free the Children is a great organization as well. I mean, it's we highlighted them, John, I think, very early on in the piece.
We did very early on. We had Helen Ma from that organization called in and talked about their organization, and it's just incredible. So again, here you have a young girl, she was 10 years old at the time, who participates in a program that was started by children, and she starts her own organization and has helped countless kids since then, and will help countless more. Well, it's just this incredible circle of results that these kids are getting.
That's the point, isn't it, really? I mean, the point is that one person starts and gets inspired by somebody else to do something. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, we talk about this being a knock-on effect and pay it back in a sense, because somebody else, you might not know what effect your actions take, whether they're good or bad, in your life. You have no idea. I remember way back, somebody came up to me. I hadn't seen this person in 10, 12, 13, 14 years. And she said, "Oh, my God, it's so good to see you. I forgot to tell you that you really helped me." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You introduced me to such and such, who became my mentor, and that changed my entire life, blah, blah, blah." So what happened for me introducing somebody, because she'd asked me to do something, I did it. I then put her on the path. I don't want props for this. It's just a question that an action of just doing something simple then had a profound effect on somebody else's life, much like Free the Children do, much like Ellen has done. An effect of somebody then going on to help somebody else and help somebody else. It can stop the circle of violence and fear and hatred that is in this world if we continue to do these type of things. I just want to mention, John, one thing. The Free the Children, www.freethechildren.com. It's Craig Kilberg, as you said, in 1995. He gathered 11 school friends to begin fighting child labour. He was 12 years old at the time. He gathered 11 school friends. Now, today, Free the Children is 2.3 million youth-involved education and development programs. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about, the knock-on effect.
$16 million worth of medical supplies that Free the Children has donated over the years. They educate 55,000 children a day. They provide 30,000 women with economic self-sufficiency to get out of situations like the ones we talked about on the show today, the servitude and slavery that's so rampant in some parts of the world. It's incredible what they do. Right.
Well, we are now 2 minutes away from the end of the show, I do believe, at the moment. We have just talked a storm this morning. There are so many things we still need to talk about regarding this, because there are so many factors that will stop child slavery. Education is obviously the key, and that's one of the other reasons why we want to help Jordan this month, because education, even with one young boy, as we said, it can go down the road of going one way or the other. And what that young boy can do, because he's a good kid, he basically could affect so many other things because somebody else has helped him. Now, why children work and don't go to school? Entrenched families, attitudes, social justice, and lack of political will. Poor education, discrimination and exclusion. Position of girls. All those things we have not talked about. We have not talked about how we can stop child labour. We will do that in the following week. That's why we have more than 1 week to deal with a discussion, because it is such a large discussion. These discussions need the other opinions and people. We'll have another guest coming in next week. The week after that, I do believe we have my friend Carrie Always coming on to talk about it. So there are a lot of celebrities that will have opinions on this. Your opinion counts as well. Let us know what you feel on our Facebook page as well regarding some of the issues that we talk about, because I think and send us photos, because we are starting a new Instagram push on a lot of our stuff. So we want to actually have our photos out there. Things that you might think are strange, things that are uplifting. Send them to us. You can find that contact on the Peace Fund website. John, is there anything else we need to chat about this morning before we drop you offline, before you can go and do whatever else you're doing in the undisclosed location that you're in?
As always, check out our website at thepeacefund.org. We are on Facebook and Twitter, 2 accounts each, The Peace Fund and Peace Fund Radio. Follow Adrian at AdrianPaul1. Follow Ethan at Combat Radio. And all of the fundraising items that we've talked about on the show today can all be found at thepeacefund.org. Check us out.
Thank you. We are also right now, just so if anybody you actually out there, we're actually looking for a web designer.
Again?
Yeah, we want another web designer. We things happen, change. So we're actually we're in the process of doing that.
Web designers are like the 2015 equivalent of like the 70s T-shirt maker guy in the garage. Just kind of.
But you've got the issue. I mean, when you've got web developers, web programmers, and web designers. They're all very specific type of things. We've got the majority of our team set together, but we're just looking for somebody to give us a little interesting look on things. So we're actually looking at that at the moment. Ethan, John, thank you for bringing that to us this morning.
My honor as always.
And thank you to the Peace Fund board and all you volunteers out there that keep spreading the word. Please tweet and retweet the things that we do, because that actually helps our initiatives and our focus. So you do help in many other ways, even though you might not donate. But if you do find something on our site that really touches you and you'd like to help, a simple one-time donation, or even you can set up a monthly donation as well on our site as well to check out some of the things that might
give yourself the gift that keeps on giving and help us do some good work.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for bringing us the show. And in closing, a quote by Grace Abbott: "Child labour and poverty are inevitably bound together, and if you continue to use the labour of children as the treatment for the social disease of poverty, you will have both poverty and child labour to the end of your time." This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you soon.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.